are hosting our first ever live streamed graduate Q&A tonight. We're going to be talking about, for those of you that aren't familiar with our programs, our graduate certificate portfolio. So we offer a number of courses in School of Engineering at Stanford, online and remotely, for working professionals to take to earn graduate credit and a grade and eventually earn a graduate certificate, or maybe even transfer and move on to a master's degree at Stanford in the future. So we have two of our great students here tonight who are gracious enough to share their time with us and share their experience being working professionals, taking these courses, and just share, what do they plan to do with it? What has their experience been like being an online student? As a just reminder to those of you who are remote right now, we are using Poll Everywhere, which is like a polling service. There's a link in the YouTube description, and for those of you here, I wrote it up on the whiteboard. You can go and submit questions. You can upvote questions that you really want to hear about, and we'll try our best to kind of cover everything that people want to know. So why don't we start with just having each of you introduce yourselves, where you currently work, and what some of the coursework you've completed through us has been. Yeah.
Sure, I can go first.
Yeah, you can go.
Hey everybody, so my name is Beth Kirsch. Well, I work locally. I work in Palo Alto. We work for a startup. It's a stealth mode startup not too far from here. I work as a technical director there of AI. So the coursework, has been following that trajectory. So I've been, with the program for almost a year now, year and a half, and taken a bunch of courses in AI. 224N, 231N, and right now I'm enrolled in 221N, which is the artificial intelligence principles and techniques. So pretty much the courses have been geared to what I do at work, and even what I wanted to do at work before I started this line of endeavor. So that's been my journey so far, and it's pretty exciting so far.
Hello, my name is Alex Kim. I work in Sunnyvale for a credit union as a compliance manager. So I've always been the non-tech person in my classroom in all my classes. I've taken about 9 classes through SCPD from stats, international security, and some of the MSE courses.
Management, science, and engineering.
Yes.
MSNE.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe as just like a follow-up question, what motivated you to start taking coursework through SCPD?
Yeah, I guess I always wanted to do my master's, right? But before I actually jumped into that commitment of actually doing a master's, I wanted to see what graduate courses were like. So I think SCPD gave that venue, that avenue to explore. It's kind of almost like test drive some of these courses, because before committing full time into it, and especially I think being a full-time professional, having like 60, 80-hour work weeks, right? You always have this this fear if you can really commit that time and dedication to committing fulfilling a full-time master's or even a part-time master's. So I think this was a good opportunity to just get that experience and just to try it out for myself if that's something I wanted to do. So, and I think that the program just fit in. It just worked to my aspirations, and that was the primary motivation to start something like this. Yeah.
For me, I started out because to complement the continuing education for my work. So I used to work for a regulatory agency, and I wanted to learn more about financial models. So I started with taking a stats course that covers financial models. And then once I took that course, I just kind of looked at the menu of offering and saw like how many great courses and then the faculties that SPD offers. So I ventured out to international security programs because I always had, interest in international affairs, and I wanted to learn more. And this was a perfect opportunity to do that, where you get to listen to all the renowned faculties, including former Deputy Director of National Intelligence and former ambassadors from Russia and Afghanistan. So, and then I think I ventured into what he was saying. So, and what more can I do here? And next thing was the natural progression was going into masters and before I commit, I wanted to try it out. So I started taking MSc courses to see if it's a good fit for me. And so far it's been, and I actually applied for next year.
Oh, awesome. Well, that's a great follow-up question.
Yeah.
So now that you've been taking courses, how has this affected kind of your career goals or your academic goals?
Okay. Well, I think one thing it benefited me for my career-wise is I actually tried to apply to some of the things that I learned during class. Like, for instance, like I took ops management course, and during the class, we learned a little bit about lean principles, and I actually tried to learn more about that, read a little bit more about that, and actually try to apply that in my job. So, and seeing how I could apply like what I'm actually learning from classroom to my work, and seeing more opportunities to do that through this class or the program. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to echo a little bit of what you said, because I think, so I've been in the industry for a decade, and a lot of what I've learned is what I've used before some of these courses as well. But I think the differentiating factor is the field changes, the field evolves, right? Any field of engineering or science keeps evolving, and I think being connected to the latest and greatest that's happening in academia and bringing that back to the industry is extremely critical, especially in these times and ages where research makes it so fast from lab to production. So I think one of the most lucrative factors of getting connected back to academia was while being in a profession, right, which requires you to be on the bleeding edge of technology, right? How do you instrument yourself back into that that framework of learning and application? So I think having what essentially I noticed in terms of my career goals was the fundamentals are all the same, but what really advances you is the connections that you make in the both in academia, and then through that exposure the literature, the science that you get exposed to. And I've seen that a lot of what that I've been exposed to over the years has translated back to the workplace. And so we've been able to connect research to actual application, which has been very, I guess, it's been very beneficial.
That's awesome. And you also, I think, told me earlier that you're also applying to a master's program now at Stanford.
That's right.
So now both of you have applied at this point.
Yes.
That's awesome. So just to give some context for people who don't really understand the connection between these two programs, all of the courses you take in a graduate certificate, you can transfer up to 18 units of that coursework to a master's program at Stanford if you are admitted, if you apply and are admitted to a program. So this is a really great example for both of them of how they've taken courses and it kind of inspired them to maybe apply to actually pursue a degree, and now they can actually take the coursework if they're admitted and transfer it toward their degree and be kind of ahead in completing it. And maybe another great segue is to talk about, once you were in these courses, what was it like balancing work and studying? Because I think that's the thing most people are concerned about, is how I'm going to go back to school and maintain my job.
Yeah, I think that's a good question, and it's there's no easy answer to that, because I think it's I mean, I think initially it's like anything, right? I mean, it's you have to invest a lot at the start. I mean, it takes a little bit of getting used to in managing. I don't say managing time, it's more like managing priorities, because you have limited time, right? So how do you fit your priorities in that time? So I had you have to rebalance stuff. So yes, initially you have to give up a little bit of your weekends. You have to maybe put in some extra effort after work, and just, I guess, go through the motions until you get to a place where you're now more I guess efficient and adaptive to the coursework. So the courseworks essentially, I think, right, are beautifully designed, because everything that is required for the coursework is available online. So a person like me, so initially, now I work very close to school, but during the first year I was almost like 25 miles away from school. So it was very hard to come in all the time, right? So it's really I think the way these courses are structured is most of the collaboration can happen online. And that's helped a lot. I mean, especially the even just simple things like the quality of the video, right, and the actual engagement in thereof. So that has helped. But also, the other forums, like I think the meetings,
or Piazza.
The Piazza is really good, actually. You can, I mean, I've never had my question, not answered like within the first couple of hours of posting it. So I think somebody's always on it. So I think for the most part, if you really want to make it work, you can. It's just going through the initial hurdle of, getting things into motion.
Yeah. You have anything to add on that?
Well, I mean, like I said, the technology makes it very interactive, even though it's an online class like Piazza or there's other website that faculties use, the TAs use, that you can interact with different students. You can interact with different students through Google+, Google Hangout, Skype. I've done study groups with people in France and trying to make it work. So I think because the way SCPD runs the program, it makes it work for you, so that and also make it meaningful at the same time. And as far as the time management, for me, was I tried to select a course that I really wanted to learn, not something that I really had to take. So if you are doing something you really like, you just make time to do it. So, because I think that's why I did it.
Yeah. What, you've talked about some of the great parts of remote learning. What has been a challenge in being a remote student?
I guess for me, it's not being able to interact at live time. So, but I think recently a lot of the TAs started office hours using Google Hangout or Skype. So they're available each week to actually interact with you through Skype, like face chatting and things like that. So that's been helpful. And the benefit of me living close by, I actually attend classes when I can, so I can actually interact with TAs and then the faculties.
Yeah, I think for me, and this is more on me because just having the time to make it to study sessions and groups, I mean, although, it's been easy to form groups, but just to keep up to, coming to campus and, or meeting somewhere else to form. I mean, we've had online, meetings and collaborations, which is good. But I think just being in here in person, sometimes, I have to wait like maybe a couple of days to get the answer, which I could have probably gotten right there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and I think asking the professor a question during an online session is not possible. So
yeah, unfortunately not yet. We just started piloting technology where we can live stream the courses, but that doesn't enable live participation.
Right.
I mean, even as we're seeing now, this is us trying to do live participation, and even that's not as great as it is if you're physically here to raise your hand, right? So it's something we're working on, but you are right, like that can definitely be a challenge. What are some tips you would give to a new student to be successful in their first course?
I think I'm going to resound what you said because I think one of the most important thing to be successful is to really enjoy what you're doing, right? So most people, I am assuming, who take SCPD or respective courses, they really either are working in that field that they're taking those studies in or want to work, right, or some combination thereof. So I think it's very important to tie your why to what you're doing, because otherwise it really becomes a drag, right? So at least personally for me, I wanted to make sure that so my courses align really well with what I do. So I think it just becomes an extension of work in that way, but something that I want to work on kind of thing versus what you have to do at work. So so I think that's number one, to be I guess successful. I mean, there's so many other things, but I guess also just trying to keep up with the coursework. I mean, just make sure that you participate. I think participation is key in discussions and forums. In some of in Piazza. I think Piazza is really awesome if you use it really well. So and some of the starter tips. And if I remember more, I'll think of that.
Any that you want to add, or?
Well, I mean, like you said, I guess try to find passion in learning at Stanford through the course offerings. And then another thing is always form a study group, because it helped me a lot. I'm a business major, no math background or no tech ground, so it has been especially challenging for me taking some of the courses taking advanced statistics course or programming courses. So the study group helped me greatly, learning from bouncing off each other, and also getting a decent grade.
Yeah.
So,
What has been one of the best parts of taking courses through SCPD?
I guess the people you meet, like the faculties you meet, and then the people you get to interact with. Like everybody's smarter than me, and where do you get to meet people like that, where interact with people who are much smarter than you, and also speak intelligently? So.
Yeah, can I say two best parts?
Yeah, of course, yes.
I think the first is the faculty. I mean, you're exposed to some really legends in the industry. I mean, you name the course, right? I mean, you're talking about folks who have NIPS, iClair publications, and they're like on like the keynotes of like one of the most inspiring, speeches, of your domain. So that's really good. And having access to those people, like you could literally walk up to them and ask them a question, right? I mean, that's really, if, when you're in like TA sessions or something. So that's been really encouraging, and just getting feedback on. And then I think the TA group is really awesome. They do a really hard work and help support you. Apart from that, I think one really good part I like about SCPD is the collaboration, the projects, because those are like really, you can collaborate with Stanford students full time, and then 2 or 3 and do poster sessions and projects. And that you really work with a group here, and you make something of value, and so many times those turn into like publications or project reports that are really useful thereof as well. So I think I love the projects that we do as part of SCPD.
Awesome. How does a student make a successful connection with a course teaching team while studying remotely?
Just participate in the office hours. They're available.
Yeah, I think office hours are a key. I mean, if you can come in personally, that's awesome. If not, there is like at least for my course, there's like a weekly office hour that for SCPD students, which is equally engaging, and the technology is good. You have like I forget the name of that queuing system, but there's like you don't have to like hang up on the line. You can just put in your queue, and it's just really nice. The technology supports just collaboration, the Skype videos and Google Meets and all that. But beyond that, I think also connecting with as many, I guess, on-campus students helps, because then you're building those connections, and you're doing projects together or reports together, even study groups together.
Have you been able to maintain any of those connections you've made with students?
Yes, absolutely. Actually, pretty much through every course that I've done so far, we have been keeping in touch. And one of the projects we are actually actively collaborating. This is almost a year after the course ended.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. What about you? Been able to keep in touch?
Yeah. They're all my LinkedIn friends.
There you
Some
go.
Facebook friends.
There you go. Networking opportunities.
Yes.
What's something you wish you'd known before you started taking courses through SCPD?
Workload.
Workload?
So to be really honest, right? So some of the courses, and we were talking about this offline as well. Some of the courses are intense, right? And then they're all like 4 to 5 units, but it's the math doesn't work directly, right? I mean, in some courses they're manageable, and you can really get through them, along with and expect what you expect in terms of putting in an hours per weekly. But some ones are like require almost 1.5 times the effort, which kind of throws off some of your calculations. So I think one of the things would be to kind of just go through the syllabus and make sure that that's something that you can manage with your current workload. I think that will definitely help reduce some of the churn.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this is not a Stanford extension like UCLA
Right.
extension.
Right.
You have opportunity to take classes with full-time
Yep.
graduate students, so they are intense. I mean, for me, majority of the classes were intense because I didn't have math or tech background. But again, the other students help and faculties help. As long as you do your work, the curving is great. So as long as you do your work, you're gonna get your grade. So
There you go.
yeah.
Maybe just thinking about your work experience, your professional experience, how have your companies that you've been at valued this certificate or this coursework as opposed to just coming in with a master's degree? And do you think it makes a difference at all?
Yeah, I think a lot of employers are very supportive of these things. So I worked at a lot of big corporations, now at a startup. So throughout the coursework, I think, in terms of supporting financially, these employers have supported the cost of the course. I think SCPD has partnerships too with.
Yes, yeah, we have certain partnerships,
Right.
and depending on the billing situation, if you are getting some
Right.
sort of employer-based funding, we're very flexible with helping support that mode of payment. Like, we don't require only a credit card. If you
Right.
have a voucher or a company is going to send a check for you, we're very accommodating to that, because we do recognize that people are getting tuition sponsorship from different modes than just their own personal income.
Right. So yes, I guess it's been supportive, and I think also the value you bring back from these courses translates to. I mean, I don't know if there's a really hard, I guess, correlation there, but I think it just helps you in terms of advancing your career. I mean, in terms of just getting better roles at work, better projects, maybe a promotion, what have you. I don't know, but yeah, I think for sure, I think it helps build your self-confidence too.
Yeah.
For me, I didn't know, having a certificate program on your resume would actually help you, because I recently changed my job, and through that process, one thing I noticed was they don't care whether it says master's program or certificate program. They only look at Stanford's name, and that goes a long way. And I actually noticed that, and I was kind of surprised that they actually, oh, you went to Stanford? Well, it's a certificate program, but well, doesn't matter. You went to Stanford, so I think it does carry weight, career-wise.
I mean, I don't think either of you in our time talking have talked about making any drastic career shift while doing these programs, but do you think, if you were trying to kind of change your specialization or what you're doing, you could leverage the specific coursework you took to do that?
I mean, if you combine your experience and coursework here, I think definitely it will help you to go to the route, whichever route you would take, because they recognize the name. This just gives you credibility, I think. So.
Yeah, no, I think it's been a little bit more, I guess, concrete in my case, because especially in the AI field, I mean, a lot of what is required in the market out there is covered in these courseworks, right? So I think it's more, I guess, there's a direct correlation of having some of these courses on your resume to just, I guess, having a better opportunity. So I think it depends on what I guess the trajectory of your career is, but I think in some cases, I think these directly correlate.
Yeah, we did get a question kind of around what is the average class size or the amount of students we have every quarter, and I can speak just from an administrative side. I would say autumn and winter quarters are our biggest, but we're usually getting 800 to 1,000 students remote each quarter. But that doesn't even include the on-campus enrollment with all the matriculated students. So I'm kind of curious, in your experience, definitely for you being in the larger CS classes, has that been, I mean, is there any pros and cons to that, or what has your experience been being in these large classes? Maybe if you've been in smaller ones, you can speak to maybe the difference of that.
Yeah, I think on an average, my class size has been 800.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a huge class size. I don't know necessarily if it really makes any difference, because at the end of the day, being a remote student, right? I think you still have the access to the material, the same way. So, and I think it's a little bit better for SCPD students, because I think you have your own office hours, which is not that huge, right? So I don't know if I have really necessarily faced any cons. As a matter of fact, for even the midterms, initially I did not know that. I thought I had to do an exam monitor, but I have always taken my midterms out on campus, which is good, because it's for me it's better to take it in class than do it at home. So yeah, I don't think it's mattered that much, at least in my case.
I mean, I've taken courses where I was one of 300 remote students. I've taken other courses where I was one of 2 remote students. So in a smaller setting, the professors actually interact with you. They know you by first name basis, and we interact on Piazza, and they usually respond right away. So you have better interaction. And larger classroom, you have larger pool of people you can recruit to build your study group. So a lot of times in those classes, we normally start with like 20 people in a study group, and then at the end we are left with maybe 5. But throughout the process, you're getting help from all those people. So, and I think one thing I noticed with Stanford classes, they set you up to work in team. Like they reinforce you to work in team outside classroom, and sometimes you learn more from the study groups than in classroom, because that sometimes I think it's designed that way, but I don't know. But sometimes it came out that way.
Yeah, that's great. We had one question that just came through that I can take. It was about many non-CS classes still require a programming background of some kind. So for those of us without that background, how would we get that? Is that something we offer? We do offer some lower level CS courses, CS 106A and 106B, which are like the introductory programming courses. We've also introduced a few self-paced non-credit courses that are like intro to data science, like an R course, a Python course. So those are some options. I would say that the departments are also very open to other online courses that you're doing at home. If that's something that works better for you to kind of supplement this prerequisite knowledge, they just look to see that you have a certificate or something showing that you actually did the work. So definitely don't be prohibited from applying in the future. You're welcome to email us and we can take a look at your transcripts and work with the department and say, okay, you wouldn't be approved right now, but if you did this and this, and got X grade or showed this certificate, we can definitely, approve you to take the course. So, don't feel discouraged just because it seems like there's a lot of engineering courses that require higher level prerequisites. There's still a lot of ways that you can still get that, and we'll try to support you to still end up in the course you want to be in. So definitely just always communicate with us, and we can help along the way. Maybe as like another question, have you noticed that now since you live in the area, you're mostly trying to come to class to meet with TAs or professors? And have you ever, like you said you were 25 miles away when you first started.
Right.
Did you take your classes exclusively online? And how was that experience, just being purely online?
Yeah, the first course was exclusively online, and I think, you definitely, I personally have benefited a lot coming to campus, because now that I'm closer in, it just helps build connections with people and, folks that you work on a project basis or a classroom basis, even study sessions for that matter. But even taking exclusively online, I think it's a different experience. I think you gear yourself to, address the coursework in that sense. So, just one thing about taking classes online, right, is that you can actually pause and play the video when you want to, which is you can't do that in the class. So I see myself going back and forth and taking a lot more notes when I'm doing it online versus kind of being here. But again, I think it's just a different experience. So I think it's really hard to quantify which one is better. But I think at the end of the day, I think what you gain from I guess from both of them is just different. So I don't know if I prefer one versus the other. But yes, to answer your question, I do see myself coming to campus more often now that I'm in the area. Yeah, but there's nothing to do with, if it's more better or better.
Yeah, and definitely all of these courses can be done completely remotely. I think that was part of the point of this event, is to show that, you can do this at a distance and still get access to all of the great benefits that these Stanford courses have to offer. I don't know if you had anything to add to that either.
Again, I think it's beneficial to have that option to come, but there's pros and cons. You said like math-intensive courses, I get to pause the video and take note where all the students in class, and I see them struggling to take notes. So being able, and I see a lot of the full-time students now have access to the SPD recording, so I see them using that as well for their benefits. Just going back, because being able to just go back and listen again, and for preparing for midterm or final, you can go back to the lecture and just listen to that again. And I travel a lot, so I've watched lectures on plane at the airport or in Uber. So just being the online classroom setting kind of gives you the flexibility, so it's beneficial for people who's working.
And have weird hours. what are like some just tips? I mean, you've obviously talked about using the recordings and pausing them and taking better notes is helpful. Is there any other just study tips that you would say to someone taking one of these courses?
I think one of the things that helped me initially was, just volunteer to be a note taker. That was good because, you kind of force yourself to be disciplined in terms of taking notes and, just being more involved with the curriculum. So, once you do that, that kind of helped me at the start. So if, somebody wants to be a note taker, it just helps them to be more involved with the program initially. Now I have not done it for the last 2 courses, but I think that was one good experience. The other tips, I guess, I think the office hours are underemphasized, so I'm going to re-emphasize that. I think they're really, really beneficial. And coming back to, just getting, I think it just, sometimes, being a remote student, you're working through problems and, it's just, let's say it's a math problem or what have you, you just get stuck in a loop and, you keep attempting it and, maybe you just end up spending more time than you want to. So just bringing that back to office hours or, remotely collaborating helps. I think just building as many connections has really been, one of the success factors of, this whole program.
Yeah. Also, unless you're Stephen Hawking's, if you don't do office hours, if you don't do study groups, if you don't ask a lot of questions, it's hard to succeed. I mean, I said they curve the grade, so I think getting a B is pretty easy as long as you do the work, but getting an A is extremely hard. So you have to push yourself to get an A or A plus in all these classes. So if you don't do all those 3, then you won't. It will be hard to be successful in these classes.
It's good to know. Yeah. That's real talk right there. I'm going to take you guys back to when you were first deciding to apply to do coursework. What was the application experience like? Any pain points or any tips for students that you would give who want to start applying for winter quarter?
Yeah, I guess for me, even before I decided to go into like a more graduate program, I took a few courses that were unrelated to the current program that I'm doing, some business courses and stuff. So that was pretty straightforward. I mean, I think it was just going to the website and applying it. I'm not sure if it was through SCPD. Probably it was through SCPD.
It's like a professional certificate.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think that kind of gave a little bit of a teaser as to how things are. And those were really good courses as well. Probably 1 to 2 units max. Yeah. But then I think when I finally decided to be serious and go with a specific program, I think it was pretty streamlined. I mean, it was essentially going to the website, getting information. I think corresponding with the SCPD staff was really helpful because they were very responsive. I mean, usually when you email, you wait for a week or something before you get a response. But I was pretty happy about the response times and, in general, the responsiveness of the folks. And then I think just in terms of eligibility, it was just a matter of submitting your transcripts and a few more questions. And I think it was not that hard. It was pretty straightforward. So I think it was more or less seamless to begin with.
And did you feel that way even once you were approved to take your first course? Did you feel like the transition into your class and all the different systems and accounts that Stanford has, how does that experience for you?
Yeah, I think it took a little bit to get used to that. I mean, especially, I kind of like missed initially when I wanted a certain course, but then I kind of waited like a week after it was announced and it was gone. So, you got to be on top of your registrations because some of these courses are so popular. You probably in a week's time they all full, right?
Yeah.
And you're on the wait list.
Yeah, and I would say particularly with your experience with artificial intelligence courses, those tend to be the ones that fill up within the first week, first few days of enrollment, depending on what they are. So I would definitely say, if there's a course that you want to take, don't hesitate, submit the application, enroll. Or just call us and let us know and we can reiterate, please enroll, like get this done, because then we have exactly what happened to you. We have people who are like, well, I want to take this course and now it's full, and it's online, there's unlimited seats, right? And it's like, well, no, someone has to grade. So yeah, definitely I would echo everything you said.
Right, and I think the good part is there's also like you can try the course, and if you change your mind, you can always, figure out, what, if you want to take another course or something, so that's an option too.
Yeah.
But I think beyond that, regarding the systems and stuff, I think Piazza was pretty helpful. Getting on it was just signing up. So I don't think there was any major issues. I think we're just going a little bit back and forth with the staff to clarify some of the questions. So I'm glad that there's somebody who's dedicated to this function, so that you don't have to figure out everything yourself.
Yeah. Now we had like a few questions in there, but just to start again, what was your application and enrollment process like?
So as far as the application process, I thought it was going to be much harder, being it's still Stanford, right? And I applied. I had to provide a transcript. I had to write a short essay.
That's right.
And within hours, like, hey, you're approved. Well, it's that easy.
Okay, so, it's not in hours, I think.
Well, well, I mean, it was pretty fast.
It was fast, though.
I thought it was going to be they're reviewing application and going through a different process, but it was a matter of hours or within days. I got approval. And as far as prerequisite, as a business major, I didn't meet any prerequisite. Business majors, you just need to add and subtract, right? So I didn't have to do calculus or anything like that. So I had to do all the calculus, all the computer programming prerequisite, and they were very helpful. Because I just found this unknown community college down south, and I started taking courses. I provided the coursework to the SCPD, and they said yes, that's fine. And it was just same day. It's like, okay, you can take that, we'll accept it, and then they accepted everything. And I was able to meet all the prerequisites to take some of the courses. And as far as the technologies, I think that's where the interacting with TAs and students is important, because like at first they're throwing these, okay, this is on Canvas and this is on Piazza, so what's Canvas and Piazza? But then you got to interact with people to find out what is Canvas and how to use it, and what's Piazza and how to use Piazza, because there's no manual to use it. You just have to learn it on your own. And everyone's helpful. You just have to ask the question.
Yeah, and I would say, to echo, I mean, I guess this makes me look biased, but I would say we have a good response time to emails. So if you're having any confusion about our application, our enrollment system, or, once you're in a course, what is Canvas? What is Piazza? How do I get my Stanford email? Those are all things that our team is here to do. I answer a lot of those emails every day. So we're definitely trying to make it as easy a process as possible, especially because you are remote. You can't just show up to your advisor or to your professor and say, I don't understand what's going on. So we try to be really mindful of that in our response times. And just to also reiterate about the application process, we try to keep it as simple as possible. Yes, these are Stanford courses, but unlike applying to a master's program, if you're qualified to take the course and you've enrolled on time and sent the application and the transcripts, you'll most likely be approved. The departments just want to make sure qualified people are in there, but they're not like, we only admit 30%, And we try to get you answers as fast as possible. It usually takes a few weeks from when you apply and enroll. And I'll mention this again at the end of the presentation, but winter quarter enrollment is open. So if this presentation sold you, you can just get right into it and apply and probably enroll by the end of this week. That's how easy it is. So definitely I would echo that. We try to keep it as simple as possible and also improve our communication around all the different platforms and systems, because that is something we recognize can be a little confusing for a new student or someone that hasn't been in college for a while. So we got a new question that is asking how you decided to take courses here at Stanford rather than another online platform like Coursera or Udacity or things like that.
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. I mean, I did take online courses like Udacity or Coursera, but I think personally what I've felt with online courses is I personally cannot find myself to commit to them. Maybe it's a first function, maybe it's Stanford, maybe it's the association of folks around here, maybe it's the group study. I personally am not a big fan of, what do you call them? It's a nice acronym.
Or self-paced, MOOCs.
MOOCs, yeah. So, I mean, maybe it's a personal thing, but for me to succeed, and be focused and provide my best, I think I need to be involved with a group of people who I can see, and know. And I think Stanford provides you kind of like all of that with like the flexibility of doing it when you want to do it, which is I mean which is very hard to find in online courses. So also the I think the best part I like about this course is your schedule is aligned with the full-time students. So that way you're now accountable to not just yourself, but to the group that you're working with. So it's time bounded, and for some of the online courses, even though they are time bounded, it just doesn't work the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you?
So for me, it's like whether you take a course at Stanford or MOOC or Coursera, I think you have to still commit your time to do it. And I guess you have to think about what's more meaningful to you. And just by looking at the people the Stanford program attracts and then the faculties they offer, like where do you go learn about U.S.-Russia relationship from a former ambassador to Russia, right? So and that list goes on and on.
Right.
So then you have to think about if you're going to commit your time, what is more meaningful to you, like, or what was more worth to you, so.
Yeah, awesome. I think we're kind of now starting to get into repetitive questions around balancing work, but is there anything else that you'd like to share about your experiences as a remote student?
Well, I guess in terms of balancing work, I think that's always going to be a challenge. I mean, there's always going to be different challenges at different points in time, because these courses, span over years, right? I mean, if you're really serious about doing like a master's program, then you're talking about a couple of years, right, before you. So I think you'll be in different points in life at that point. So I think keeping your goal centered to what you want, and then working your life around that is what I do. And it's definitely hard. I mean, I won't over advertise anything here. I mean, it takes a lot of commitment and sacrifice, but I think at the end of the day, if that's what you want, that's what your passion, then you make it work.
Yeah, ditto.
I actually have another question for you guys. I don't remember your guys' program plans off the top of my head, but did you guys take courses every quarter since you've started, or have you taken breaks, or what does that look like?
I have taken, I've taken a break. So I've taken courses for the first, so what I did was for the first 2 quarters, I took it back to back. And then, I had to switch my job, so I took a break. And then, now I'm in my 3rd course. So, taking a break.
Yeah, what about you?
I took break to take the class for prerequisite in the middle, because in the beginning, the courses did not require prerequisite of the statistics and the international security. And then I took a break about a year to take all the calculus requirement and the computer programming requirement. And I took MSc courses. So I've been taking maybe 1 to 2 classes a quarter, depending on the workload. And there are resources available to find how hard or difficult the course is. There's a Stanford student, very smart guy, created this website. Carta.
Yeah.
And then you can go there, and then you can get all the insights about the course and average grade and average time each student spend for the course. And you can kind of plan that according to that. So using that, sometime I decide to take another coursework, looking, this one takes 1 hour a week, and this one takes 1 hour a week, and I probably combine that in 1 quarter. And another course, it says 3 hours a week or 4 hours a week, then I only take 1. So there are ways that you can kind of plan it, and there are resources available. And again, just talking to other students, and they will help you. So take this course and take that course.
Yeah, and I can speak to that too. We employ a few current graduate students in some of the higher enrollment departments like management science and engineering, computer science, statistics, and electrical engineering. And we have course advisor emails on our website, and you can email, EE course advisor directly and say, hey, I'm interested in this certificate or this specific course. What does the workload look like? What's a logical order to take the courses? Or this is my background. What do you think? And they're so knowledgeable about this that they can give you really, really detailed, way better answers than I could ever give about whether or not this makes sense for you. So that's definitely something that I recommend people utilize, maybe before deciding on a course to enroll, or reach out to us and we'll loop them in if we think it makes sense. And then also just to reiterate what you guys have already touched on, you don't have to take courses every quarter. If you're pursuing a graduate certificate, we give you 3 years from when you finish your first course to finish your certificate. So it's a lot of time. Usually certificates only require 4 courses, so you can really take your time and take quarters off. And you know, like you said, use different resources. I don't think I'm allowed to sanction Carta as like, you should check how many hours your class is, but I do know a lot of students use it. And that can be a really helpful way to just plan around what's going on. Also, if you are in communication with your managers, and maybe you guys can speak to this more of your experience working with your manager through this, you know, I've talked to a lot of students where they, you know, said, well, a work project just randomly came up, and sometimes that's unavoidable and you have to drop a class, and we're there to help you through it. But as much as you can communicate with your managers or your work and kind of know, well, spring has a big project, I won't take a course then. Summer is going to be pretty quiet. That's a great time for me to do something. I think that's a great strategy to employ as well. And I don't know if you guys have like specific examples of working with your manager or whoever to kind of have support through this program.
Yeah, no, I think I can talk to that. So,
Yeah.
like for example, you know, one of the things you have to plan is like some of these courses are only offered in a certain quarter.
Yeah.
So if you miss it in the last quarter and, you know, you miss it again, then you just have one more year to do it. So that a little bit of planning needs to be done on your end. But I think for me especially, you know, during the first course, you know, I specifically went up to my manager and said, hey, I need your support here for this quarter. I'm doing this. It's a pretty intense course, and, you know, I may, you know, require some flexible work hours. It's not that I'm not going to do what you want me to do. I'm going to probably do more, but, you know, it's just I need your support and, you know, helping me, you know, if I want to, you know, maybe go attend an office hour, you know, during the workday. And
Yeah.
I think generally people are, you know, I mean, if your manager is a good manager, I mean, they're fine with it, and, you know, you can work around that. But yeah, I mean, that's.
Do you have anything to add to that?
Not really, because I was intentionally taking classes that were unrelated to my work, and so I was on my own. But you can still make it work.
Yeah.
Because I was doing that because I was actually taking courses that I want to take. And it was something I want to learn about. So, you know, I actually wanted to make time commitment to make it work. So.
Yeah, and I'll just speak actually on a personal level. I have not taken any courses through SCPD. I just work here.
What?
But I actually just started a part-time master's program myself, and it's kind of on the weekends where I have to go to the class. But even just doing that, I've found that being honest with my team and with my manager and saying, hey, this is what I'm doing. There's going to be a day when I need to leave early to get to class, or just I have a big thing due this week, like, you know, and also setting that expectation for myself with school. Like, I know there's certain weeks when enrollment is my main priority for this job, and I kind of need to put my schoolwork to the side. Mm-hmm. So I would say just setting those priorities with yourself as much as you can before signing up is really important. Life will still hit you,
Yep.
but I think that's, for my own personal experience, been really helpful. And also to speak to course scheduling, like you were talking about, it tends to be that courses are only offered once in the same quarter each academic year, which can be kind of frustrating depending on when you start in the year and you want to be working through a certificate. It's definitely something we're constantly trying to address. Because we are filling courses that are on campus, we're kind of also at the whim of Stanford University scheduling, which if you haven't worked in that, it can be a pain. So, you know, we're trying to make it as easy to work through as possible, as many offerings as consistently as possible, and I think in the 2 years that I've been here, we've definitely made improvements on that, but that is something to keep in mind, and you're welcome again to reach out to us and say, I'm interested in this certificate, when are all the courses typically offered, and we can kind of give you a tentative idea of what a program plan might look like. Or, you know, again, it might give you a sense of, well, spring quarter, nothing I'm going to want to take is offered. That's a great quarter for me to take off. You know, so again, we can work with you and do our best to try and give you an idea and set an expectation of what your plan could look like. Yeah, and I think, you know, that's most of the questions that we have had come through. I don't know if there's anything else that if there had been an event like this before you started, you would have wanted to have a question answered, or.
It would have been great to attend an event like this before I started. I think a lot of what you learn through experience can be learned, you know, through some of these events, right? So can't think of any question that hasn't been
covered.
yet asked.
That's good.
But, yeah.
Yeah. What about you? Do you have anything you'd want to add?
Just one thing I want to say is SPD is a great resource. The administrators. They ask questions, they answer. But also the faculties and TAs are very helpful. They're very accommodating. Some classes they offer alternate assignments for remote students. They understand the challenges of being remote students. So sometimes when full-time students were taking in-classroom tests, they offer us to do like a writing assignment so that it's more flexible for us. So don't think that you have to follow all the rules. Sometimes I think sometimes they're more lenient towards remote students because it is more challenging. So
yeah, awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And just one other thing I'll note, we're wrapping up our session. Thank you guys again for being here and answering all these questions. Winter quarter enrollment is open, so if you liked what you've heard and you're interested in learning more and maybe even taking a course, our enrollment period is currently open until December 10th. The actual quarter will start January 7th and run till about end of March, depending on when finals are. We have a lot of different courses that are being offered in a variety of departments, not just the ones we've talked about tonight. So please, go on to scpd.stanford.edu, take a look at our portfolio. Please reach out to us with any questions. For those of you remote, there was a few slides that were posted at the beginning that kind of reiterated this enrollment information. And for those of you that are here, feel free to come and talk to me about any questions you may have. And if you guys are here for a few more minutes, we can take some more direct questions. But yeah, thank you guys so much for coming. And for those online, thank you for listening and trying this experiment out with us. Hopefully it's been helpful and giving you an idea of what taking a lecture. There's lectures in this room all the time, so this is actually just what it's like.
I think there's a question there.
Oh, there's a question? Yeah.
Number one, regarding the access to TA and the lecturer, I mean, for instance, while you are here, could you go to the classroom and take part, or you had to go to, for instance, TA and ask your questions there? Because we are remote, and obviously we only access it via Piazza, right? Right. That's one question, and then my next question is regarding the textbooks or notes. I mean, like class notes. Like you mentioned that you are taking the notes, you pause it, take the notes, but I just wanted to know, it's very, very important that I have access to the notes and I want to reread them in order to be able to get the answer. Two questions.
I'll just reiterate the questions for people online. So the first one I think was around just, can you only talk to your TA, or who do you get to interact with and how? Is that the question?
What I meant was that, for instance, what these gentlemen are on campus,
Oh,
or
yeah.
have access to the campus, can they go to the lecture itself live and then to TA?
Yeah, so I can speak to that. So you're asking about, can I attend the lecture on campus? So those seats are reserved for matriculated students. That being said, you can come to campus for office hours. So if you know there is an on-campus office hour happening and you're in the area, please feel free to come. And also, you can reach out to the teaching teams, and if they have their own kind of like by appointment office hours, again, they're more than willing to accommodate. And then I think your second question was around access to textbook materials and to notes. Maybe you guys can speak to that. Yeah.
I think just a point to the first question. I think the other thing is, as part of your curriculum, if you're doing a project which lasts the entirety of the quarter, or at least 3/4 of the quarter, you're assigned like an advisor of that project itself. So you work with some TA, So I think that can be a point reference for, not just the product, but you can ask questions and they're pretty open to answer those. And although SCPD has its own office hours, but I've never felt that you cannot go to another office hours. I've always been into just any office hours that's on the calendar. So, and I've been welcome. So that's definitely been, I've not taken classes here because I think it's just easier for me to do it remotely.
Yeah.
And then also, I think there's some logistics there. But for the second question, I think as part of every lecture, there's material that's posted on the course website, which includes the slide deck for that lecture, notes for that lecture, and even link to the video and assignments and all that good stuff. So I think between the three of those resources, it's pretty detailed as to I guess what is covered in that particular lecture. But I think to your point, there is still there may be some still details that may not be captured in those notes. So I think for that, I prefer to just take my own notes and cross-reference that, more importantly, with fellow classmates. Yeah, and they're open to sharing their notes as well, so that's good.
Anything you want to add, or?
As far as coming to class in person, just ask. Because I've been to a classroom where it was full, so they let you know that, they already let you know in advance that it's full and there's no room. But a lot of times, when there's room, TA will say, just you're more than welcome to come. So, but I always ask, well, can I come to this class or this session? And I never got no for an answer. They always said yes. But certain class, they will let you know ahead of time they're short with seating. And as far as office hours, again, just ask. They know that you're working professional and you have challenging. Sometimes a lot of people are in different time zone, so. If there is something they can accommodate, they will try to do it. And a lot of the TAs are students just like us, so they will try to work with you.
That's right.
So one of the things that they've been start doing is the Google Hangout and Skype. So, but if you have other medium that you want to use, all you have to do is ask.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I think that concludes our panel, or Q&A. Thank you guys so much. And I'm going to wave so they know that we're no longer recording this event.